1 year ago today, after just celebrating Beyond the Air for 9 years, the unexpected phenomenon that was the fourth generation of My Little Pony had one last adventure on the air in a 3-episode special, concluding a run that lasted 9 seasons, 222 episodes, and an untold amount of love and dedication from fans of all ages and all genders. Did this unprecedented success get the finale it deserved? Well, on the week of Friendship is Magic's 10th anniversary, let's find out. Hello everybody, I'm Kate Cast, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic series finale, the ending of the end, and the last problem. I know, it's been too long. You'd think with my choice in avatar for my online personality that I would have covered this episode a while ago. Or, any of the episodes from the final season besides the first one. What can I say? 2019 for the most part was a tough year to keep content going in, especially with my 100th review looming over me. But I think of a time when many of us are celebrating that Friendship is Magic has been around for 10 years, no matter how long you or I have been proud to be a brony or Pegasister, is as good a time as any to jump back into the pony pond with all 4 legs and see if this 3-part event of a finale was the send-off the show deserved. Without further ado, let's dive right into the ending of the end. With Twilight'S Coronation fast approaching, the villains who have been lurking in the shadows all season are ready to properly strike. With this increasing threat on the horizon, the main 6 must gather their allies to protect Equestria and the things they value most. Before we get too into the major plot of this episode, because trust me, once we start, there ain't gonna be many places to stop, we definitely get doses of the series finale vibe, with the group preparing for Twilight's coronation and Twilight being surprisingly confident about the whole thing. She gets her own throne too and makes Spike her royal advisor, a position he has more than earned in my eyes. With the waves of respect and disrespect Spike has been through by the show and the audience, it's nice to see him be trusted with a position that really suits him. It's all a nice little peek into setting up where some of our favorite characters will be going when this whole adventure is over. Meanwhile, the Fearsome Five, -2, are preparing to make their move after a season's worth of preparations. Man, remember when season-long arcs in Friendship is Magic were just background clues and visual cues? Now we've reached the point where there were several dedicated episodes building up to both the villain's major plan and Twilight becoming ruler of Equestria, meaning they can cut right to the chase here because we've already had several episodes to set everything up. They really nailed the season-long story arc for this final season. But that doesn't mean there aren't still some surprises, like the fact that Grogar, remember him, the new big bad for the season, was really Discord in disguise the entire time.
That was unexpected.
Indeed it was, Tyrek. I mean, I guess there were hints. Looking at him now, there are similar design features, and if I remember right, this was a theory floating around at the time, but I'm not positive since I was trying to avoid the leaks. Okay, so Discord assembled the villains. Why did he do that? Well, it was so he could stage an invasion that Twilight and the others could fight off to boost Twilight's confidence in becoming ruler of Equestria that has now turned into a very real invasion that Discord cannot help stop because said villains took away his powers.
Not a great plan.
A lot of fans have given Discord flack for this, saying this was a really insane thing to do. And yeah, it was. But hello, Lord of Chaos, it's kind of on the packaging. While this was in no way a good idea, I'm a little easier on Discord, not just because he's one of my faves, but because this lines up with the kind of thing Discord has been doing since he was reformed. Setting up elaborate schemes that seem incredibly unhelpful, but turn out to be just what the characters needed. Getting to mess with them in the process is more of a little bonus. He does this the most often with Twilight. It's basically the core of their relationship at this point. I do believe Discord had the best of intentions, and I even believe that he could have very easily handled these 3 if he still had his powers. He felt like he was 3 steps ahead of these guys because he usually is. After all, it worked with Sombra, where Discord practically poured his heart out about how much he believes in these ponies. He's seen how much Twilight doubts herself, and I think Discord just wanted her to believe in herself as much as he does. This was just a really stupid way to do it. A stupid way that makes sense, so therefore it's fine from a writing standpoint, but still stupid. But to his credit, he doesn't try to hide how badly he messed up. He immediately lets the ponies in on it once things go south, and to the show's credit, he is thoroughly chewed out for this convoluted stunt of his. Even Celestia gets to yell at him. It goes from cathartic to kind of funny pretty quickly. Part of me is disappointed that Grogar wasn't real though. I was looking forward to having a new big bad for the final season. Maybe in G5, Grogar. Maybe in G5. Well, we may have lost one villain, but we still have this triple threat, which is A-okay with me. Seeing these three go from bitter allies to a hilariously reluctant team was one of the highlights of Season 9. They definitely got one of the best songs this season. And their dynamic continues to shine throughout the events here in a battle for who gets to steal each scene. Between their banter, boasting, and battles with our heroes, these three already formidable foes are wildly entertaining while they're rampaging through Equestria. I especially love touches like Chrysalis being anxious to build her kingdom, Tyrek being knowledgeable on ancient magic and how to deal with it, and Closey Glow shifting between promoting teamwork with her evil allies and being absolutely done with the good guys nonsense, especially interrupting and mocking Twilight's friendship speeches.
As long as I have my friends by my side, I'll put my faith in friends. Can we get on with this, please?
But of course, they still have their headbutting moments, including over who gets Discord's magic, which Tyrek points out is too dangerous to control, and everyone was ready to point out that he has swallowed all of Discord's magic before. But that kind of fits into my working theory that Tyrek absorbs magic in its raw form, rather than inheriting specific powers from it. Otherwise, he might be able to, fly. When Cozy Glow provides a, frankly, nightmare-inducing example of how hard it is to control Discord's power, I think it's a good excuse for the villains not taking advantage of having magic as powerful as Discord's in their arsenal. They were never gonna let the villains wield Discord's power, it would have been immediately game over, so they needed an out, and this was a fine one. So to combat the villains, Twilight immediately steps up to the plate and calls in reinforcements. I know I mentioned this in the season premiere review, but I've just gotta say how much I appreciate that the Season 9 bookends remember the allies the cast have out there. Preparing the Pillars, Starlight, Kane's Shining Armor, and even Celestia and Luna. You know, recruiting the rulers of the land shouldn't be as big of a deal as it is in hindsight, but that's an old joke at this point. But it might be the last time I ever get to make it. It's so great to see that even after a small moment of self-doubt, Twilight gets back up and starts to prepare a counter-strike with great precision. There's been quite a bit of build-up of preparing Twilight to take on this mantle this season, and even though she's not officially ruler yet, this is a great display of Twilight's strengths to band people together in times of crisis. Which leads to some really cool confrontations, but let's get the least cool one out of the way first. Tyrek against the Pillars. Now, I personally don't have too much of a problem with Tyrek bowling over these legendary guardians. It does kind of suck, but it serves a purpose to show how strong Tyrek is in the moment and really raises the stakes. No, my disappointment comes from a huge missed opportunity. Remember this little bit of Tyrek's backstory revolving around his brother?
But Scorpan soon came to appreciate the ways of Equestria, even befriending a young unicorn wizard.
If I were to make a list of missed opportunities in Friendship is Magic, never mentioning Scorpan after Twilight's Kingdom would be my number one, especially after bringing Star Swirl back. Tyrek is face to face with the wizard who turned his brother against him, and they don't get any kind of dialogue referencing that? I know this is the series finale and we've got a lot to do, but even just a couple of lines, even one line about Tyrek and Star Swirl's history would have been amazing fan service. I'd imagine Tyrek would want to stomp him into the dirt even more when he has this golden opportunity in front of him. But you can't have everything, I guess. That disappointment, however, was made up for by the awesome battle between Starlight and Chrysalis. Not only do I love this payoff to a villain's grudge, but it's just so dang cool. Say what you want about Starlight, but this little pony can really put up a fight. She may not have won in the end, but that fight was badass. Almost as amazing as the team at Kennerlot defending the castle. It's not often we get to see the main six all flex their muscles and fight back, but when we do, it's so much fun. I love the callbacks to the geese from the 200th episode, and it's one of the rare times Spike breathes fire as an offense. I feel like I can count all the times he's done that on one hand. You know what I mean. Even Rarity did a cool thing. Good job, Rarity. I applaud you for throwing that rock.
I threw a rock at him.
These fights are all like small encapsulations of how far the show has come with raising the stakes and making these battles more intense. It's weird. I love the variety in these battles, but because there are so many of them, it feels like they go by quickly, getting a really great taste before the whole plate is pulled away to make way for the next course. It's a great meal, but I feel a bit greedy in saying I would love to have savored each course. But again, I understand there's only so much time, and what is there is really memorable. And can we talk about how brutal these fights are? Not just for the kids' cartoon, but like in general? Is this where we remind ourselves that this show is rated TVY? That has these almost painful images of characters being grabbed by sensitive appendages, blasts that take out almost entire castles, and real moments of dread and suspense? I say, as a 27-year-old woman, that this little girl's show was genuinely tense to watch. I commend them for going all out here and trusting that it wasn't too much for their audience. There have been tough fights in Friendship is Magic before, but nothing like this. The villains are very powerful this time, and they came in with a really elaborate and well thought out plan, spreading out to take out all the reinforcements Twilight gathered, working together to build their power and beat our heroes into a corner, and even taking the hope of others rising to stand up against them from Twilight, as they've slowly been pitting the Earth Ponies, Unicorn, and Pegasi against each other, disturbing the harmony in Equestria that can pose a threat to their victory, and the main six work so hard to build.
This was a very well-planned invasion.
I know I said the season premiere felt like a hopeless situation, but I don't think I knew how good the group had it, to the point where Twilight is left to flee from the fight as a last resort. She's left with no resources except her magic, which barely poses a threat to the villains. When part 1 ends, you really do feel how much was lost in this fight. So let's move on to part 2, where we see our first signs of hope, that even though these characters have been beaten down and many have been stripped of their powers, they aren't ready to give up, especially Discord, who not only genuinely apologizes for his actions, but steps up to make things right. And I really like how they gave Discord this moment to turn things around. Not only is it a good way to take responsibility for his actions, but it shows that Discord still has strengths outside of his magic. He's got a sterling silver tongue and uses it to his advantage with a double dose of continuity against Tyrek. Even without his powers, he can still cause chaos, and I like that they got a chance to display that. But surprisingly, he's not the only one willing to fight back.
We may not have our magic, but we aren't completely helpless.
Since when? Since when? I want receipts. I guess it's ironic that now that the princesses have no powers, they're able to hold off the villains perfectly fine long enough for the main five and Spike to get away. They manage to make it to the Crystal Empire, somehow, where they find Twilight completely freaking out and ready to give up.
Yeah, well, what else is new?
Okay, joking aside, this isn't really character regression for Twilight like it very easily could have been after dedicating a good chunk of the season to having her finally overcome this hurdle in her character. This depressive spiral the group find Twilight in is built up to pretty well. There were hints of doubt when Discord revealed he was behind what happened with Sombra, and if she had doubted herself and her leadership from that point on, then I'd have a problem. Instead, she charges in to prove she can handle these returning villains, except she couldn't, and it led to her having to abandon her friends and her soon-to-be kingdom to save it. She tried to be an inspirational figure and put together a solid plan of reinforcement, which was completely counteracted almost immediately. So when she tirelessly searches for a solution and can't find one, that feels like a good time to feel like you failed to me. Honestly, it does feel like everything Twilight and the others have managed to build over the course of the series is falling apart. Unlike how this usually goes, where the show just kind of forgets or poorly gets rid of powerful characters who can help, like the princesses or Discord, here, every major reinforcement was accounted for and effectively dealt with, because this is such an overwhelming threat. Heck, the divide among the ponies is getting so bad that the Wendigos are back. Great continuity and all, but it's also a great shorthand to get across that the villains have kind of put Equestria back into its darkest age. I mean, we get a ton of cameos in these scenes, but at what cost? It all gives off that feeling like your contributions don't matter in situations where outside forces get more and more overwhelming and less in your control, which is something I'm sure none of us could relate to at all right now. But as well as Twilight's fears are presented, so are her friends' reassurances that this isn't just her problem to fix. I love Applejack adamantly stating that you don't just stop trying because making things better seems impossible, and Fluttershy, my little fave, passes on the lesson that scary situations are less scary when you have support, which again is something I think a lot of us have learned in one way or another in the time since this episode aired. Was this episode ahead of its time? I really love the main six emphasizing how much Twilight has made a difference in their lives by bringing them together and making them something much more significant than they could be alone. While it's not expressed in this episode, we all know the reverse is very true as well. And I appreciate how this episode goes out of its way to say how important they all are to each other, and not just through another Twilight speech or rainbow lasers, but with something just as powerful. essential. Your friends believing in you even when you don't. While Twilight is certainly the main character of the show, and she gets most of the focus in these seasonal bookends, for the very last big adventure, it's great to see that they celebrate the importance of all of the main six by making that friendship they've developed and treasured for the last 9 years be the one shining beacon of hope in all this. And before we move on to the biggest symbolic moment of the series, let's use this confrontation between the heroes and the villains to gush about the animation, the expressions, the changing environments, the freaking choreography, effects, and staging of these high-paced and powerful action sequences. The animation in MLP seems to improve in one form or another with every season, but it's clear they went all out with this final outing, cranking every exciting and expressive technique they developed during the show's run up to 11 to deliver an experience that is beautiful to watch, including the moment where our beloved pastel pony heroes stand together as they stare down a devastating blast. That is really dark, but they are thankfully saved by quite possibly the coolest moment in Friendship is Magic history. I know I said this in my Moonvasion review, but 2019 really was the year of massive nerdy team-ups. They got everyone here. I don't think there's a single memorable character who isn't charging into action here. Flim and Flam, Tempest, the Kieran, and characters we haven't seen since season 1 all come to help, and it is amazing. Well, everyone except Canes in Shining Armor, because they apparently had to stay behind. Yeah, why bring the captain of the Crystal Guards and an Alicorn princess with her magic still intact along when they can stay behind and guard their child? Because they did such a great job doing that last time. Look, I'll go for bat for these two more than most Brony analysts on this site, but wow, this is annoying. It sucks that they had to be left out of such a great assembly of allies. But this gathering isn't out of nowhere either. In a really beautiful set of scenes, we see the students from the School of Friendship pass on their lessons of friendship and teamwork to convince the creatures of their homes to unite and stand together against the villains that tore them apart. This and Twilight's big friendship speech really reinforced the philosophy of the show, the power of friendship and its reach and transforming nature, something the villains themselves actively fought against feeling in a previous episode, showing the many forms friendship can take, the bridges it builds, and the actions it inspires. In the beginning, I remember people having issues with the fact that friendship seemed to be this near untouchable force that only the main six could wield, and while there were times where it certainly felt like that, this moment shows that while the main six have possibly had the greatest success in mastering the potential of friendship, it doesn't belong to them. They share that with everyone, represented by having 3 generations of similar but very different groups of friends being the strongest force to combat this powerful threat. Star Swirl, the Beard, and the Pillar show how powerful ponies from all walks of life can be when they work together. The main six show how not only standing together, but taking the time to reach out, empathize, and bridge gaps despite your differences can change lives, and the student six show that doesn't just apply to Twilight and the girls, and that friendship can be felt through all creatures, displaying that if you pass on the lessons that helped you grow into a better person, it can leave a great impact. Making connections, taking the time to understand people who might seem mysterious, or standing in camaraderie leads to more opportunities and expanding the hearts and minds of those around you. This is the symbol of the difference Twilight and the others have made over the course of the show, and in the true spirit of MLP, the problem was ultimately solved with rainbow lasers. But it's rainbow lasers that have been earned. What do you say? One more for old time's sake? Now, without their great powers, the villains are offered the chance to change their ways and join in this collective gathering of friendship. Oh wait, no they're not, because they didn't learn anything, so they're turned to stone instead. I'm usually the first to support the reformations in this show for a lot of the reasons I just gave a minute ago, but this was probably for the best. Lesson here, some people will just never change, so you just gotta petrify their flanks. But not before this happened.
I can transform the cosmos so everything is made of icing!
How is this more terrifying than when the maniacal school filly had this power? Well, Discord fixes it before we can enter an era of sugar-coated chaos unlike any other this land has known, although I'm positive that would have happened if we were getting a season 10, and all is restored to the way it's meant to be. When all is said and done, it really does feel like this was a conflict and resolution worthy of the series finale. The lesson that there's always going to be problems, but you keep trying to make things right is probably the last big lesson Twilight needed to learn before she was crowned ruler. And the theme that you leave a greater impact in people's lives than you might realize not only continues the show's theme of how friendship, education, and understanding can build bridges, but it's just a beautiful and uplifting theme to take away from such an uplifting show. And it's kind of sweet that this world-shattering event of a two-parter ends with the group just going out for donuts, celebrating what they have together before things really change, and possibly another nod to the Avengers, but who knows. You could probably end the series right here, but we've still got one more episode to go, aptly titled The Last Problem. In the final episode of Friendship is Magic, a lot has certainly changed. Spike got a lot bigger, and he's not the only one.
That's why I picked you for the job.
Wow, Twilight is one tall horse now. Okay, so I know this is jarring for a lot of people, and it took me a hot second to wrap my brain around too. I mean, this is a lot to process, but I think how you feel about this approach to the final episode is really going to come down to how you feel about time skips. Personally, I like the idea of making the series finale a time skip. MLP has had about 3 or 4 comfortable places where the show could have ended, so this feels like a good way to make the end of the show feel more definitive. Plus, it doesn't feel like we missed too much. Twilight and Spike are in the positions we left them in at the end of the last episode. They've just been doing it for a really, really long time. But I feel like I'd be more reluctant to accept these new looks as canon if I didn't have a year to process them. I have seen a couple of fans make much nicer Princess Twilight designs, but I still think this is perfectly fine. It's really wonderful to hear about Spike delegating between literal dogs and cats, and Twilight being so comfortable in her role as ruler, being a more calm and assuring mentor, much like Celestia was to her. She even gets her own student now, Luster Dawn, who not only has an adorable design, nice to see that some pony knows how to properly wear their mane, but seems to be keeping up the naming theme we've come to expect from important pseudo-Twilight unicorns. But this one is also like Twilight because she's the top student at the School of Magic who doesn't see the point of friendship. Luster's claims send this final episode in an interesting direction, going back and forth between our new president and the story of Twilight's coronation. Something else that I think makes the time skip work is the mystery it adds to the narrative. Because of the implications of Twilight's mortality now, we don't know how much time has passed, and the conversation is vague enough to wonder if something did happen between the main 6 that left Twilight on her own to rule. The proposition was always for them all to rule together, but there's no question that Twilight is the figurehead here, and the flashbacks emphasize that they all have lives and goals of their own, which I appreciate that they don't get rid of or devalue the rest of the group's achievements to have them go off and follow Twilight's dreams. But they're so focused on those jobs and their preparations for the coronation that Twilight feels like she's seeing the first signs of them drifting apart, and worrying about maintaining your friendships when such a big change in life comes along is a very relatable conflict. But is it weird my biggest question here is what's going to happen to Twilight's castle? Is it like her summer house now, or did Ponyville just get the best Airbnb ever? The fears of the ponies staying friends when they won't be together anymore does end up having a sort of sweet resolution, since all the main 6 are worried about how much things are going to change, which makes Twilight less worried. It's kind of cute in a sad way. There's no immediate answer to this problem, since it'll be long and continuous, but if all of them value their friendship so much that they're sad and scared at the idea of it fading away, that means they'll work harder to keep it going strong. But this revelation came at the cost of properly preparing for the coronation, which turns out to be one last celebration gone wrong for MLP. And really, would you have expected anything else? At least there's a ton of cameos in the audience at the coronation that is a feast for the eyes for every brony, and Starlight tries to ease the distance between them and Twilight by giving her a complete series collection of the show. Aw, how sweet. And something I'm sure a lot of viewers would like. Shout Factory, get on it. And on Blu-ray, please, that'd be amazing. Over the course of the episode, while we're slowly figuring out how our little ponies dealt with this change, Luster Dawn keeps waiting for the moment where Twilight's bond with her friends disappeared, only to be shown that it didn't. How they stay friends is different now, but they are just as close as they've ever been. And now a parade of the older main 6 and how I feel about the changes. Even as it grows, Pinky is still able to maintain her mane, which is very funny, and she's the only one of the group to have a little pony of her own. That's a shock, but it's so precious. I also appreciate they managed to get Cheese Sandwich on one more time before the show ended this season. Otherwise, I feel like the reveal that Pinky settled down with him would have come out of nowhere. Rarity expanding her business to all creatures of Equestria and aging very gracefully, if I do say so myself, is fabulous. Rainbow rocking a Spitfire-inspired mane and rising in the ranks of the Wonderbolts is so cool. And as sad as it is when you realize that Applejack is wearing Granny Smith's scarf, and what that means, I like that it carries on this sort of unspoken tradition that started with the hat that belonged to her dad. It even looks like Apple Bloom and Golden Delicious are part of that tradition now. And AJ and Rainbow might be a couple and Fluttershy and Discord? I mean, that seems to be what they're hinting at, and most have accepted that as canon, but nothing was confirmed as far as I know. Although if we're talking about confirmed couples, it's blinking you miss it, but I have to give some love to Lyra and Bonbon's wedding announcement. It's so precious, and I love that the show went through with it. And I originally wasn't a huge fan of Fluttershy's big loop of a mane here, but I've warmed up to it. It is kind of cute, and I realize what a coincidence it is that Fluttershy wears her mane pulled back now, just like she does in Daughter of Discord. The whole episode definitely has the air of wrapping things up in a bittersweet but satisfying way. It's sad to see the girls say goodbye to Celestia and Luna at sunset on the day Twilight is crowned, but it's uplifting to hear Twilight establish the Council of Friendship, and that council has been going strong for so many years afterwards. That's another reason I like the time skip. It shows that important connections don't have to fade away just because they have to adjust for your friends to grow and achieve goals. MLP is sort of a found family story, finding the most important people in your life through eccentric individuals and unusual circumstances. And I know it can bother some people when the end of a found family story sees the characters going their separate ways. I can completely understand that, especially to people who have developed similar important relationships, but I think MLP found a good compromise. This episode states that it is very possible to keep meaningful, long-lasting friendships afloat even when you and your friends are so far apart. It takes a little more work, but to have that kind of support and companionship, it's absolutely worth it. Something I think anyone who has made friends online can relate to and take comfort in. None of my friends live in the same state as me, a couple not even in the same country, but they are some of the best I've ever had. And the message that friendship, maintained over distance and around people's own busy lives and goals, can be just as strong as ones right in your own backyard can resonate with a lot of people. And there is no better gesture that things have come full circle than when Twilight sends Luster to live in Ponyville to make friends. Giving us one last song to play us out of the show, the magic of friendship grows. And in my opinion, it's one of the best in the series. It really embodies this final message the show has of how strong and important and ever-changing friendship is. This song was on a relentless loop for me in the weeks after the episode aired, accompanied by an absolutely jaw-dropping but deeply heartwarming tour around Ponyville, checking in on most of our favorite characters. I can't possibly go through all the highlights. You all know it's here, you all know it changed, and I think we can all agree if the liquid pride of every brony wasn't dripping before, it was pouring at this point. The last problem can kind of be an overwhelming episode on your first viewing, not just because it's the last episode, but because there's so much change. But I love the details in every area of this last episode. How Canterlot and Ponyville are populated by all sorts of creatures, the new stained glass windows. Although personally I would have loved to have seen grown-up Flutterheart in person, but oh well. And all of the new and old faces walking around Ponyville. We've certainly come a long way from copy and pasting the same background pony 15 times. I know people weren't fond of everything that's changed, and that's fine. In fact, some people found this epilogue outright morbid because with Twilight becoming a full Alicorn, sure, let's call it that, it feels very likely that, like Celestia and Luna, she's somewhat immortal now. And with how much quicker the rest of the group seems to be aging, it's very likely she'll outlive her friends. Even though there's nothing in the episode that confirms this, it's not a ridiculous assumption to make. But I feel like Twilight's position and approach to ruling Equestria is the most optimistic and hopeful conclusion the show could have had. Because, while it is certainly possible Twilight will outlive her friends, she won't outlive their friendship, and the lessons she learned from them have been instilled into the very foundation of the land she watches over. This finale is assurance that Twilight will work tirelessly to make sure those morals are upheld and will live on as part of Equestria and beyond forever. That creatures of all kinds will continue to bond and talk and connect, that when problems arise, they will be dealt with understanding and cooperation, that the connections of friendship will continue to shape creatures for the better and help all involved become the best they can Season B. Friendship is Magic is a show that got much bigger, expansive, and ambitious during its 9-year run, and nowhere is this more evident than with this final collage of all of the beloved characters this show has created. All the lives these 6 ponies who decided to run into a forest one night touched, and all the stories told. But now the story is over, ending very fittingly and emotionally by closing the book that we opened at the beginning of the show, just in case you weren't crying yet. So, overall, I think I can safely say that My Little Pony Friendship is Magic had a very satisfying finale. Like I said, there were quite a few places where the show could have ended by now, and most of us would have been pretty content. So for the big, honest-to-goodness finale, they really had to pull out all the stops, and I certainly think they did. The ending of the end has a couple of missed opportunities that do bug me, especially since they're small, and you could have very easily put them in without disrupting much, but the increase in scale, the conflict and tension, the stellar voice and animation work showing off the amazing talent on the show, and embodying and reinforcing the themes of the show that I hold very dear, shows both how far the show has come and what made it great since the beginning. It really represents the show, including having missed opportunities. Let's be honest, nobody's coming out of the show without at least a couple of things they wish had been expanded on. The last problem is both a mellow and emotional epilogue, and I was thrilled they made one more episode after the epic 2-part special. I love when shows give you an epilogue episode. A whole story dedicated to celebrating and wrapping things up instead of just putting the end after the last commercial break. It shows that the future of this world and these characters we come to know and love are in a good place. You don't have to love where every character ended up, but I think it keeps the hopeful, optimistic outlook the show represents and portrays the rewards that have been earned over the past 9 seasons. It might be weird to say, but I didn't expect to get this emotional about the show being over, even now coming back to it for this review. It felt like a good time to stop, and we had almost a year to prepare for this curtain call, but as my favorite pony says, this really is the end of an era that was transformative, honestly. I'm not gonna go too deep into the show's journey, influence, or evolution over its run. There's a lot to say about it that I couldn't possibly do justice right now. Maybe one day I'll go back and give the show the dedicated retrospective it deserves, but now that this generation of My Little Pony is truly over, there's definitely a desire to look back on the importance of it in our lives, and I'm no exception. This and Gravity Falls really reignited my love for animated shows, seeing that the genre could reach new heights and shatter expectations. Not just societal expectations, with a show built to pander to little girls being so well made it spoke to audiences of all sorts, but my own expectations. A show that really had me embrace fandom culture and want to participate in it, challenge myself creatively, and really dissecting these kind of shows to ask, why do I like this so much? Which is one of the many reasons I'm sitting here talking to you all today, and why this form is still my main mascot here online. Even if I talk about the show a lot less than I used to, I never really fell out of love with it. I know this community can sometimes be overbearing and hasn't been the kindest to some. Everyone has their own feelings towards it, but speaking for myself, it's been nothing but good to me. Getting to try out so many creative things, from analysis to art and storyboard, to discovering other bits of entertainment from the likes of Dr. Hooves and Turnabout Storm, to becoming a team member with Equestria Daily, to the thing this show sets out to do. Put yourself out there and make friends. I think I can safely say I grew a lot over the course of this show's run, and I don't know if I'd be the same person if I never gave it a chance. And I know I'm not alone in that.
I'm glad I gave this show a chance. Otherwise, I would have just thought it was another silly kid show.
My Little Pony has been my favorite show for the better part of a decade.
When I look back on all of this, I'll always remember how the show came right out of the gate with that weirdly charming, lovable yet relatable slice of friendship and fantasy. And all the different kinds of people who were drawn so powerfully to that.
The best way I know how to describe it is that it's like an escapist fantasy from cynicism. The show fundamentally values things like kindness and generosity and empathy, and it argues that friendships can be just as deep and meaningful as any other kind of relationship in life, and you don't see that enough.
But there's something in the show that really speaks to me on a personal level. Its message, while corny, speaks a very personal, very real truth.
Fluttershy is best pony.
This ended up teaching me a lot about people and about myself, both good and bad. What it means to be honest, what it means to be generous, what it means to be needy. How niceness is underrated and that most kind people are nice, and how kindness is underrated and that most nice people are not kind. when the world we live in is unfortunately right about what's weakness and unfortunately wrong about what's strength.
And my gosh, there's just this whole world of fantasy creatures and adorable puns and lovable characters who grow and change as the series goes on, and they actually take those lessons to heart.
About maturity, gender, fulfillment, about the many interesting people in the world, and which of them are my real friends. And even my future wife, for that matter.
And because of all that, there's this fandom that's so explosively creative, and it gives you just this place to explore what speaks to you and build on all the elements that excited you in the show. And through all of it, I found some of the closest, most amazing friends because of Pony and because of Equestria Girls.
I know that when MLP was slowly coming to a close, a lot of people were worried and even scared that this meant the end of the fandom, the end of bronies. But fandom can live on long after a franchise's time is over, as long as there is love, passion, and creativity for it alive. And I don't think that'll stop with MLP anytime soon. Just like we learned in this final episode, meaningful things can live on after drastic and life-changing changes, but it's up to us to keep it alive. Whether you're still active in the fandom, or if your time with G4 has just become a fond memory, we can all say it impacted our lives in so many unexpected ways. Wherever we go from here, don't forget.
Friendship is magic.
Friendship is magic.
Friendship is magic.
Friendship is magic.
Friendship is magic. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.